Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 3 of the plodcast. I hope you've been enjoying what I'm doing. Leave me a comment on my Facebook group. Leave me a request. Send some love. This week's edition of the podcast is lots of fun. It's got some poems. I did a recap of the toy show that I went to, like I promised I was going to do last week. Check out that follow through. Yeah, so I'm not even going to waste anybody's time. Let's just go right into poetry. This week's poem of mine is called Ain't No Phoenix. I kept hearing people in their work reference the phoenix about being reborn and stuff, and I kind of had an issue with that because the phoenix is just reborn a phoenix. It doesn't, like, it's a phoenix already. It doesn't, like, it's not stronger, it's not any better, it's just a phoenix again. And I thought that was kind of a weak metaphor for metamorphosis and stuff, so I wrote about it in a piece called Ain't No Phoenix. I ain't no phoenix, he said poetically. There is no mythology here. There is no boggling bard song of bathing in flame. There is no rebirth, no golden bird, and no ash. There is no 500 years forging in the fires of existence, watching nations crumble and rebuild, crumble and rebuild, crumble and rebuild, generations crumble and rebuild, crumble and rebuild, the patience it takes to crumble and rebuild. He never achieved that brand of majesty, never perceived that kind of calamity, never fully folded to the flame. The phoenix, solar flares fantastic, burns out, fades away, and is born again from fallow ash, but born again a phoenix. Cyclical snake, sideways Sisyphean phoenix figure 8, crumble and rebuild into something worthy of crumbling and rebuilding. But I ain't no phoenix, he said poetically. Closer to an empty beer bottle tossed into a campfire, partial panic, initial assumption, alarm, that'll explode, not if it's empty. And I am very much empty. Cleansing campfire forge, storytellers, metamorphosis, metaphors for this, sure. But I ain't no phoenix. Test of time and trial by fire, I am melted glass the morning after, warped wicked with no morning after, because I look pretty sweet on your shelf. A lone, worn wolf that left the six-pack silver bullet to become something more. A monument to metamorphosis. Caterpillar metaphors for this have no legs. I never crawled on my belly, so I'll never butterfly. I am a bottle burned clean of labels, melted, stout, and slanted, but still recognizable. Altered on the altar. I sacrificed my sameness not to stand out, but to stand up, to stand the heat, to feel the flames of change and fan forever, never crumbling and never needing to rebuild. I ain't no phoenix, he said poetically. Just an organized entity repurposed as an empty glass, half full, standing stout and slanted, forged in the fire of change. This week's classic poem is by A. Milne. It's called Us Two. A. Milne, of course, wrote Winnie the Pooh. And I wish there was more poetry in the contemporary Winnie the Pooh. I don't feel there's enough. Other than Eeyore, he's fantastic. He's walking poetry. Some of the characters were making fun of his house, I guess. I don't know why they would do that to him, but they were making fun of his house, and he turns to the camera and he goes, "Average house for an average donkey." And I was like, wow. Eeyore is the most defeated character in all of literature. Yeah, that has nothing to do with this poem at all, other than the fact that Winnie the Pooh is in this poem. This was the first poem that I actually ever memorized in grade 9 English. Shout out Miss Stransky. She would make us memorize something, and then we would we'd read it, and anytime we stopped and we went like, she'd make us start over again. And I guess, I mean, somewhere along the way it helped. It's nice in poetry, but when I'm talking to you guys, I like to leave that in because that's how fucking people talk. So, this is the first poem I ever memorized, one of the first poems I ever kind of connected with and really got. Us Too by A.A. Milne. Wherever I am, there's always Pooh. There's always Pooh and me. Whatever I do, he wants to do. Where are you going today? Says Pooh. Well, that's very odd, 'cause I was too. Let's go together, says Pooh, says he. Let's go together, says Pooh. What's twice 11? I said to Pooh. Twice what? Said Pooh to me. I think it ought to be 22. Just what I think myself, said Pooh. It wasn't an easy sum to do, but that's what it is, said Pooh, said he. That's what it is, said Pooh. Let's look for dragons, I said to Pooh. Yes, let's, said Pooh to me. We crossed the river and found a few. Yes, those are dragons, all right, said Pooh. As soon as I saw their beaks, I knew. That's what they are, said Pooh, said he. That's what they are, said Pooh. Let's frighten the dragons, I said to Pooh. That's right, said Pooh to me. I'm not afraid, I said to Pooh, and I held his paw and I shouted, Shoo! Silly old dragons, and off they flew. I wasn't afraid, said Pooh, said he. I'm never afraid with you. So wherever I am, there's always Pooh. There's always Pooh and me. What would I do, I said to Pooh, if it wasn't for you? And Pooh said, True. It isn't much fun for one, but two can stick together, says Pooh, says he. That's how it is, says Pooh. Sometimes you find hidden gold when you go back through an old book and you find something that wherever your head space was at in that moment, that piece of work didn't fit for that moment and you ruled it off as crap. But then you go back and you're many moments later and, you know, perspective changes and you reread something or you maybe read it in a different tone and it becomes something fantastic and it's like this gift from the poetry gods. And I found one of those this week. I was flipping through an old book and I found this rant about Facebook and how terrible it is and how that's it, I'm deleting my Facebook. I've had enough. So yeah, that's what this is. I hope you like it. I call it Tea-Stained Letter. I've had enough. I'm shutting down my Facebook page. I don't care what cat you think is funny, or what dead prophet you're regurgitating. I won't be attending your stag and doe because I've thrown 100 shows and you, fucker, haven't been to one. I don't care what you stand for, or against, and stop wrecking Game of Thrones and Walking Dead. And you might say, P.O.E., wait a minute, won't you miss out on rap opportunities? Rap is a wasteland right now. Got offered a 15-minute slot with Mos Def, but I have to sell 50 tickets at $50 a piece. I have to make some jackass $2,500 to do 15 minutes without any pay for my time and effort? Fuck you, idiot. These are the musical opportunities I'm gifted on Facebook. I've got 57 mutual friends with some dude I don't even know. He ain't coming to my next show. I stopped sending out invites and I barely changed my status. I got friends that send me texts when I should check my inbox. I got people on my list that are consistently sick, people with 10,000 baby pics, other rappers posting lyrics about their great big dicks, while I've also got my stepdaughter on my Facebook list. Haven't made a solitary true connection, but more than my fair share of spelling corrections. I want someone to snail mail me a tea-stained letter that describes my Facebook newsfeed. Then I'm going to drive directly to their home and give them an honest-to-God high five because that's a like where I come from. I'm going to post pictures on walls. And when I say that, what I mean is that I'm going to post actual pictures on actual walls. I'm going to share something right now via chat. I don't like bad grammar. You can't be on Facebook using the wrong board. I am bored. Board. Are you? Well, it's nice to meet you, bored. Have you met my buddy 2x4? He also don't speaks too good. He's got to get his pressure treated like he keeps trying to ply wood. LOL, GTG, BRB, IDK, LMFAO. Haven't really been down with Newspeak since 1984. Generation Text. Reckon it for all of us. I'm gonna spend the rest of my life at the bottom of an ore well playing rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock with Alan Moore while Aldous Huxley masturbates and giggles out the phrase, "I told you so," as he ejaculates. All my Facebook friends can tweet about it, and I'll just read about it in a tea-stained letter. And now, a haiku. I ignore my health. Sugarcoating blood sugar. Diabetes. So like I was talking about last week, there was a toy show. Autumn and I went, and I said that I was going to try and write something about it or give it a review or something, just be inspired by it. And I ended up writing a lot more than I thought I would. I just kind of described our day at the toy show, and it turned into something I think it's pretty cool. I don't know. If you've never been to a toy show, you'll get a little bit of perspective on what it's like. If you go to toy shows, you'll find it funny. If you collect things, you'll find it funny, I think. Yeah, it was just about our day at the toy show. I was excited just having a discussion about whether or not we should go to the toy show early so as not to miss out on any deals, or go to the toy show late and try and catch bargains from the vendors who are tired of packing up the stuff and carting it back and forth. There was also the option of paying an extra $5 and getting an early bird ticket to get in and wander around a good half hour before the general public would have its benefits, but that would mean getting up before 9:30 a.m. on a Sunday, and that just isn't happening. The last time the toy show was in town, we cleaned up on our last lap around the floor, so we decided to go late. The show closes at 3, and you want more than an hour to wander around, but 2 hours is too long. We shot for 1, but stopped for coffee and dawdled along the way. We found a parking spot right away, which was nice because sometimes it's rough. We parked near the exit for a quick escape, but a longer trip across the lot to the main entrance. We walked through the lobby unscathed until we turned down the first hallway. There were about 10 cosplayers acting out a scene of some sort right in front of the toy show entrance. I didn't recognize any of the characters. We awkwardly stepped through the scene because it showed no sign of ending anytime soon and they were completely blocking the entrance. We paid our $10 each, which was a bit steep, but we always save enough money to make it well worth it. The first thing we noticed when we went in was that half the toy show was missing. Last time we came to the Holiday Inn, the show took up 2 of the conference rooms. This time the left side conference room was closed right off. Cool. So we paid the same price for half the toy show? Too late to do anything about it now, so we press on. Down the main hall was homemade jewelry and vinyl records signed by wrestlers. This, to me, was a bad omen of things to come. 2 tables into the toy show and not one toy seen. The next table had t-shirts. They did have Marvel and DC characters on them, so at least we were headed in the right direction. We turned right into the room with the toy show. Half a toy show. It begins. We weren't really looking for anything in particular, but there was this one thing. We collect Pop Funkos. We have over 300 now, from old cartoon characters to music legends to horror icons. The Borderlands video game series is mine and Autumn's favorite game, mostly because we can play co-op on the couch and we have a lot of fun. So when we discovered they made Funkos of the characters, we were stoked. We bought the main 4 right away. They made 2 special versions of the main comic relief character called Claptrap that were only sold at EB Games. Got 'em. They made a variant Moxie in a different dress. Got her. So when they made some Black Friday exclusives, we had to get those too. We tried, but the exclusive boxes were sold out by the time we got to the store on Black Friday. So there were 2 outstanding versions of Claptrap that were outstanding. A black one and an ultra-rare gold version. I knew the odds were kind of poor, but you never know. We headed into the main room of the toy show. Immediately on the left there was a fella selling odds and ends. He had a few California raisins, a Smurf, an American Gladiator figure of a random contestant, some Hot Wheels, and a whack load of Star Trek The Next Generation stuff. Not interested, but cool to see. His table was like a collage, and there was very little space not occupied by an image that ignited the nostalgic fire of youth. The next table was Hot Wheels. I love that Hot Wheels still exist. There was a father and son duo going through searching for missing cars on a checklist. That, to me, is what this kind of thing is about. Generational bonding, the thrill of the hunt, and in some cases, filling childhood holes. Toys wanted but never acquired, toys acquired and then lost, and deals that make you think you're a genius because you saw the diamond in the rough that no one else noticed. The next table had Migos. 8-inch tall plush bodies with plastic heads of superheroes and Star Wars and Star Trek cast members. They had a Spider-Man, but it was $200. Not that it isn't worth that, but I knew how much money was in my pocket, and that would make it a short day at the toy show. We pressed on. I stopped to examine a box of old comic books. They mostly had the Flash, but there was some spectacular Spider-Man in the mix. I pulled out the list, aka Google Docs, on my phone. Number 23, 24, and 25. All on the list, and all in amazing shape for comic books from 1978. I asked the teenage girl behind the counter how much, and she said that everything in that box was $2. $6. Done deal. We broke the toy show ice. While I was pawing through comic books, Autumn had made it to the next table where they had a Jon Snow Funko from Game of Thrones. We love that show, and we love Jon Snow, and we just hadn't ever come across one before, and he was only $10. That's the number we like to pay for Funkos. Retail is like $12 to $15 plus tax, and even higher in some places because our dollar is in the toilet. But if you buy in bulk and you know where to look, you can get them for 10. So $10, Jon Snow, done deal. The next table had X-Men figures from the early 90s, all mint on the card and good to go. I've looked at this table before. He was here last time. I scooped all the recognizable X-Men at $5 a piece, and he threw in the Riddler and Two-Face from Batman Forever for nothing. Now there was only X-Force and New Mutant characters left. Not really anything I'm interested in. The next table was all wrestling. New, old, in-box, out-of-box, pristine, and ruined. Every wrestler you could imagine. I picked up a loose Ultimate Warrior that I had when I was a kid. I tested its spring-loaded arms for gorilla press action. There was none. This Ultimate Warrior's arms spun freely. It's always cool to see old toys still in their packages, but it's always nice seeing toys that have been loved. The next vendor had shelves full with Funkos and a sign that read $15. Dreaming. I did a mental tally of what he had that we needed. He had a few wrestlers we didn't have, the cast of Bob's Burgers minus Tina, some Elder Scrolls guys. 10 in all. I said, how much are they if we were to buy 10? He looked puzzled and wrung his hands as if the game had just begun. I was candid. You can always tell if there's wiggle room. He said, I can probably cut you a bit of a deal. And then he went off on a bit of a tirade about the dollar being poor, and he was barely making any money at all off these, and the best that he could do would be 140. Quick math, that's $14 a piece, which is not $10 a piece. He was still talking about the economy as we backed away slowly. Ain't nobody got time for that. The next table had more comic books, but they were all too new for my liking. The next table had superhero piggy banks. I've seen them before and they were nice. Good size, good poses for the characters, and decent value for a larger item. They're normally $15 to $20 in the stores. I always pass because my number for them is 10. I always think, one day. Here they all were. The second Spider-Man, I had gotten the first one as a gift. The Walking Dead ones that Autumn had been eyeing, a good-sized Hulk, a good Rocket Raccoon, and a Dr. Doom, all on a nice-looking base. The sign above them announced 1 for 10 or 3 for 20. Not bad at all. We decided to wait and do a full lap of the floor first in case someone else had them for cheaper. This is a rookie mistake that I've made a few times where I've bought an item and then found it for a few dollars cheaper 3 tables down. You have to do a full lap before you buy anything. Even though I knew I had already broken the rule for some comic books and the Jon Snow. It was also a good way of getting out of a conversation when you've asked the price of something and the number is too high. Without offending the vendor, you can politely excuse yourself and tell them that you have to do a lap before you buy anything, but you'll probably come back around. You won't. As we moved forward, we had a brief back and forth about how good of a price that actually was for the banks, and how we should actually stop back on the way out. The next table had a picture of Cthulhu eating a theater advertising the After Dark Film Festival. We weren't positive that it was for sale, so Autumn asked. He said that it was for sale and asked us what we thought it was worth. Autumn asked who it was by, and for more information, he had none. He was awkward and off-putting. Just tell me what you want for the item. Don't make me guess. Don't try to fuck me if I go too high or insult you if I go too low. Just tell me the price. He had a 12-inch Spider-Man from the 90s animated series, but I didn't ask how much it was. The next table had pogs and cards. We didn't stop. The next table was run by a fellow who sold us some of the Christmas presents we got for the family. He didn't seem to remember us, but maybe. He had a living dead doll in a 25-cent kissing booth called The Kiss of Death. He has a little skeleton mask and kind of reminds me of the Dr. Volcano character I play at the haunted house. It was marked $24, but I had a feeling we could get it for $20 if we waited until after 2:30. He watched us ogle it and made a joke about how the kiss of death is just the way to start the new year. We gave him the spiel about doing a lap first and moved on. At the end of his table, he had a bunch of Funkos with a sign that read 1 for 15, 2 for 28, 3 for 39, 4 for 48, or 5 for 60, which was the same as 4 for 48. Still, $12 a piece, still too much. The next 4 or 6 tables were all comic books. I pulled out my list. The Spider-Man issues were all too new. I asked if he had anything older, and he looked at me strangely. He said pompously, "There are some in there in the 50s. His tone said, "There's no way that someone that looks like you could have comic books that old. There's no way you have everything that I have." Both statements were false. There was something about this guy that just made me hate his guts immediately, and I didn't bother to look through the rest of his stuff. He wasn't getting any of my money. We passed by tables of what looked like Pokemon or something along those lines. I don't know anything about any of that. We passed by a table with a bunch of toys from the 90s, Wildcats, the old WCW figures in ratty, worn packages, $5 each. Nothing caught my eye, really. At the end of one of the tables, there was a penguin figure from Batman Returns. Great shape, but no packaging. It was a good toy. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. Meh. I put it back. Now we were back at the first table with the California Raisins and the American Gladiator. I was flipping through some random comic books when Autumn said she needed $5. She said they had the Penguin, in better shape and still in its packaging. Sweet deal. The American Gladiator was only $5, but I thought that I would come back around again and get it on the way out. We had done the whole perimeter of the floor and there was just up the middle of the room to go. We were making good time to be wandering at the twilight of the show. The first table up the middle, old video games. Always cool to see old Nintendo games still in their boxes and preserved nicely, but not something I'm particularly interested in buying. The next table had He-Man. All things He-Man, complete Castle Grayskull, complete Snake Mountain, and a slew of figures, both vintage and re-released. All very cool to see, but again, not on the list. The next vendor had tables and shelves of Funkos. This caught my eye just before the sign that read 1 for 15, 2 for 23, 3 for 30. $10 a piece. Now we were in business. He had 3 of the 4 Munsters. He had a Pepper from American Horror Story, the only one that we're missing. He had Sam from Trick or Treat, one of the last horror ones we need. An E.T., 2 characters from The Strain, and an exclusive Angry Groot variant that I had never seen before. Autumn asked him if the price continues to drop if we buy more than 3. He laughed and said he was sure we could work something out. That was when I saw it. The gold claptrap, sitting nonchalantly on the shelf with the others as if it wasn't the holy grail of toys in my world in that moment. It had a tag marked $40 on it. I grabbed it immediately and started the pile. I added the Pepper, the Groot, the E.T., and the Sam. I said, "How much?" When he did the tally, the original price would have been $95. Pepper, E.T., and Sam were 3 for $30. Groot was an exclusive and he cost $25. And the gold claptrap for $40. He said he could do it for $85. I already knew I was in because I'd looked the claptrap up on eBay and it was always going for around $50 to $70 US plus shipping plus import charges. It would have cost me at least $80 to get one here. Now I thought maybe we can push a little further here. I said, what if we add another 5 to the pile? And I pulled down the 2 strain figures and the 3 Munsters. He ran the math and said he could do it for $125. I ran the math. Knowing the gold claptrap would cost me $80 online, it was like getting 9 Funkos for $45. This is the type of deal that makes it worth it to pay $20 just to walk in the door. This was the ultimate score for the day. We buzzed as we moved on into the last grouping of tables in the middle row. Some more comic books, wrestlers, and Hot Wheels. Not interested. By now it was 2:30, and we had already done some damage here, but decided to do one last tour of the perimeter. As we walked back towards the guy with the kissing booth, our journey was interrupted by someone yelling, "I'm closing it down! Everything on this table is $2. Okay. Autumn found a random Funko from How to Train Your Dragon. Never seen it, but I will never turn down a $2 Funko. When the mob in front of that table got too big, I turned around to see the table in behind. There was a set of 3 limited series Voltron comics. I know that this is Voltron's first appearance in comics, and I also know they're planning a reboot. The full set was only $5. Yoink. As we revisited the table with the Living Dead doll, he made the same joke about New Year's, and I knew now that there was no way he remembered us from last time if he didn't remember us from 40 minutes ago. Autumn said she had a $20 bill reserved for the doll. He agreed right away as if the number in his head was 20 the whole time, but he knew that if he put 24 on the tag that someone would offer his real asking price. Either way, it was a good deal. Now, as we were headed back, I did a quick tally of the cash I had brought that was earmarked for nostalgia and Funkos. If you're following along at home, we've spent $171, plus the 20 to get in. When I go to the toy show, I like to go with $300. So there was some money left over. I wanted the American Gladiator that I had seen an hour ago. When we got back to that table, I searched through a box of comic books marked $1. He had a set of Willow comic books. I thought that was all right, so I grabbed it up. And the Gladiator, knowing that these were coming home with me. As I looked through his other boxes of toys, I found a Captain Hook from the 90s movie with Dustin Hoffman, some Star Trek figures with unpunched cards. I gathered up the items in my arms, knowing that this guy was going to give me a deal because it was late and because he had already dealt with me earlier that day. He said, "So you want all those, eh? And I suppose you want rock-bottom prices." I said, "Of course," as if what he said was a joke. Then he says, "Well, the prices are all firm, and that one there you're holding is $10. Immediately, I started slowly putting everything back. Fuck this, dude. I don't need attitude when I'm trying to buy your items. You can pack it the fuck back up and take it home where it came from, dick." I got over it. Some people aren't salesmen. Plus, I was already walking around with the Holy Grail. There was one more stop. I wanted to go back to the guy selling the piggy banks, 3 for $20. What if we bought more than 3? Because there was actually 6 that we were interested in. He said he could do 6 for $35. Knowing that these were 17 apiece in the stores, that was a fantastic deal. We chose our 6. The 2 Walking Deads, the other Spider-Man, the Hulk, the Rocket Raccoon, and the Doctor Doom. Our arms were full of bags of stuff, and that's how you leave a toy show. I turned one last time at the exit and watched briefly as the vendors were tearing it all down for the day. They'd be back in 3 months, so would I, and we'll do it all over again. Since we left with some money, which rarely happens, we stopped at IKEA and bought 2 sorely needed bookshelves to hold all the new Funkos and Banks and toys we bought. We put them together while we watched the Broncos beat the Steelers. As I type this, I'm looking past my screen at a wall of bookshelves filled with Funkos, and the one that keeps catching my eye is today's Holy Grail, the gold claptrap that will always sit as a monument to the day that we won the toy show. And that's what this is all about. So that's it for this week's episode of the plodcast. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, follow me on Twitter at Poejob, Poejob. You can like my Facebook page. You can add me as a friend on Facebook if we aren't already friends, but we probably already are. I have 2 shows coming up this week. I'm going to be at We Flip Tables at Coculligan's Irish Pub on Wednesday the 27th in Mississauga. Come to that. It's a head-to-head poetry death match. There'll be a feature. I don't know who it is, but I might be able to have more information for next week's podcast. On the 28th, Thursday the 28th, I'm going to be in Toronto at the Central for a punk rock and poetry show. We are alternating poet, punk band, poet, punk band, poet, punk band. It's going to be sick. It's a pay what you can show, so if you're in the GTA, maybe you'll come. Next week's episode of the podcast is going to be a story called Dragon and King, and I am so excited to finally unleash this on the world. So be ready for that. You're going to love it. I think that's everything. I hope you like this week's podcast as much as I had fun making it for you. Yes. We'll just limp into the barn. See you later.